Is your bark worse than your bite? Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. And our idiom today for Supersize Your Business, for growing and how to grow your business, is bark is worse than your bite. This is an idiom from the mid-1600s. And it, of course, means, well, it comes from a barking dog, a ferocious sounding barking dog. And often we find when we meet said ferocious sounding dog that it's really a mush puppy. I met the neighbor's dog the other day, and it came romping around the corner. It's this giant black poodle. I guess it's a labradoodle, but it's definitely a giant sized labradoodle mix. And it's the nicest dog ever, but it came running at me when I'm taking out the garbage and barreling down at me and barking and sounding so ferocious that I actually was a little bit afraid for a minute. And we all experience situations where something sounds much more threatening or appears much more threatening than it is. And this idiom is no different. It comes from dogs barking ferociously, and then we come to find out when we meet them that they're much nicer than they were, that the threat and the sound of the threat is actually more than the action that would ever be taken. In our businesses, in our lives, we see this all the time. Who hasn't had a teacher or a neighbor or a friend or a customer service rep or someone in authority speak to us in a way or threaten us if we don't toe the line or behave a certain way or follow the rules or the laws, that we are going to be made a huge example of and punished to the extent of the law or the rule, or we're going to be held accountable. Well, we're all accountable, right? We're all 100% responsible for our actions, what we say, what we do, everything. Whether we believe it or not, we actually are. We're at least 100% accountable to ourselves, right? We can fool other people, but we can never really fool ourselves. So the threat of the punishment or the threat of the withholding of something is often more just threat and hot air than it is that an actual punishment or an actual bad act or a bad thing will happen to you. It kind of reminds me of fear. Fear in general, is such an interesting feeling. We all feel fear, right? We're all afraid of something. But what we fear, the consequence, what we fear is going to happen, 90+% of the time, never, ever, ever happens, right? We fear something, and actually, the more we fear it, the more we think about it, the more likely something will happen. But it's usually never as bad as we think it is. So my question today for you is your bark worse than your bite? How are you as a leader? How do you show up as a leader in your organization? Do people fear you? Are they afraid of you? Or do they know what to expect? Are they afraid of how you're going to react or respond if they give them bad news? Or if they give you bad news? Or do they know what to expect? Do they know, hey, some of us, our bark is just worse than our bite. I tend to be very straightforward, very upfront, very in people's face about this is my expectation, and if you don't meet that expectation, we're going to have a problem. In corporate America, I guess I probably had a reputation as a tough, not a tough boss, but a tough functional leader. I led the quality department in most of the companies that I worked at. And as such, you get to stick your nose in everybody's business. It's really, really fun. But you also have to hold people accountable to certain standards, meaning we have processes and procedures, everybody needs to follow them, or we need to be continually improving those processes and procedures to guarantee the outcome that we're promising the people that we serve. Now, some people didn't want to be held accountable, and they didn't want to guarantee the process or for the customer service, whether that was internal or the final customer, the end customer. And so my job was always to toe the line, bring people in line, and make sure that we were doing what we said we were going to do. Always doing what we say we're going to do, because that's my belief in how you run a good business. You always are true to your word. You do what you say you're going to do. And that especially applies to our customers, right? If we're committing to and promising our customers some type of deliverable. I'm from manufacturing, so we always had standards and specs and things that we delivered to customers. We had to meet those standards and specs and things and timelines that we were delivering to customers. If we didn't, we weren't meeting our commitments and we weren't doing our job, which is, definition of bad business, right? Bad business practices. So my job was to toe the line, and one of my favorite things to do in my last corporate job, when technology changed and digital photography was readily available, was to go around and take pictures of everything that would get us in trouble or would cause us to be nicked or fail an industry audit. There was an industry audit called AIB, which is the Baker Association, that comes in and audits your food facility. And, you know, just like OSHA does safety, and Department of Agriculture, USDA, does food inspection as well. And the FDA, there's lots of regulation in food industry. There were things that you would be doing and it would be an automatic fail. So my job as the quality director was to go around and let people know what those things were, so that number one, we would correct them and we wouldn't have them happening in our facility, but number two, so we wouldn't fail our audits and our outside inspections, which were frequent, by the way. And sometimes other department heads were offended and hated that, but I wasn't doing it to come down on them or to be bossy, although I do like being bossy. I was doing it so that we would always be doing the right thing, so that we would always pass our inspections, so we would be a better business, be a better company, and better serve our customers, because that's what it's all about. So love to know your experience with bark being worse than your bite. I remember my dad going through a Marine drill sergeant phase with my sisters and I, and we always knew that his bark was worse than his bite. And so all of us have people like that in our life. So my question for you is your bark worse than your bite? Do people know that? Or are you being a little too tough on people? Sometimes we're too tough on people because we're really tough on ourselves. All right, that's our idiom for today. Would love to know your experience with it. I will, of course, be with you tomorrow with another interesting idiom. What does it mean? Where does it come from? And how might you apply it to your business today? Take care.